You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel.
Right up Meridian, baby.
All right, folks, welcome back to Right Up Meridian. Gang's all back. I got Tony here. We are ready to rock and roll off season. This is our time, man. We got free agency. It's time to play around. But first, Right Up Meridian is part of the Back Home Network. Back Home Network is sponsored by Homefield Apparel, and they are killing it this summer with, they have it named, I kind of name it like the funky mascot collection. They just came out with the Delta State collection. Tony, you know who Delta State's mascot is?
I do not. I could probably guess 200 things and be wrong on all of them.
I only know because I'm looking at it online. The Fighting Okra. And if you think that's cool, go look at the stuff they have for sale. It's fantastic. A ringer tee that I like a lot. Some really good stuff. Go check them out, homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code HOME23 for 15% off your first purchase. All right, Tony, we're talking, it's our time, man. Free agency, salary caps, the stuff we love. But most importantly, first thing is kind of the biggest non-news for anybody who is really paying attention, but Pascal Siakam, easy for me. Pascal Siakam signed his not extension, but signed his free agent offer with the Pacers. It's not going to be eligible to be signed until I think July 1st, but it's already done. Was the first person, kind of the first major name to do it. Not a surprise when he was traded here. It was kind of, everyone agreed it was kind of baked in. And as I had been saying also, even if he had wanted to test the free agent market, you go out there and look at the number of teams that have a max spot and also could use the services of Siakam and also are not a team that he already turned down or he's just left last year was really, really small. So there really wasn't, I don't say there's not a market for him because there is. There just wasn't a market for him at that price, the salary he wanted. So it all made sense. But still, you get Siakam to the max deal. Initial thoughts on that signing?
I thought it was great. I think me and you both kind of had some reservations when the Pacers traded for him about, just some age things and whatnot. And then certainly in the playoffs, kind of showcased the value that he really brings to this team, certainly on the offensive end, but even defensively a bit. And, then you think that, okay, even if they got him at a 5-year deal, you start thinking, okay, he's aging a bit, but this is, to me, best case scenario, getting him on a 4-year max contract. He certainly has a couple great years left in him. As he kind of gets over the hill, maybe, he could have 4 great years left in him. But if he does, his contract still has value. It starts getting on, the expiring spectrum if you need to move off of it. So, to me, it's best case scenario for the Pacers that, A, they were able to trade for a superstar that wanted to be here. They did all the right things, in the 6 months or whatever it was that he was here to maintain that great relationship and expect that re-signing, and then got him, to me, on the best deal that they could get him for. So to me, it's just kind of hats off all around to how this process played out.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this is something, as a Pacers fan, it's unfortunate, but it's true. It's also like you just don't get to pick in the same pool as everybody else. The idea of like, oh man, it'd be great to go get, enter free agent you want here. You just don't have the choice of getting the high level free agents you want. It's like, Paul George would have better fit. It's like, well, guys like that just aren't coming here. You also look at, Malik Monk looks like just signed back with the Kings. This is going to be a pretty slim free agent market. Like a lot of the guys, OG and Siakam are off the board. Those were 2 of the guys. Everyone was talking about Malik Monk. He's off the board. Caruso already got traded. Like there's a lot of things already happening. Like I'm just not sure who's going to be available outside of Paul George. But this is the thing of Pacers, you always have to deal with is you can't just get, who is the absolute perfect fit. You have to get with who's also available. All of that said, I think Siakam is a really good fit here. And, you look at some of his numbers, his, true shooting percentage was better in, the best year of his career. Looking at it was 2019 when they won the title and he had Kawhi Leonard next to him. It dipped down after that, but it's been going up, and it went up a lot this year. It's the highest of his career. His shooting percentage, his effective field goal percentage has been solid throughout his career. And the way he plays, I don't expect a massive, dip in the way he plays versus like a Ja Morant or, even like an Anthony Edwards type where it's so based on athleticism. Pascal, again, not saying he's not athletic, just saying that, his game isn't predicated on athleticism to get there. He's got a mid-range game. So I think it's a great signing. I also kind of like the 4 years versus 5 years. That gives you a little bit of flexibility. You're going to have Halliburton under contract one more year, but it kind of gives you that chance of like, all right, if things aren't working out at the end of this term, you could move off of this and kind of do a reset while Halliburton is still only 28 years old or, 28, 29 years old. You're still in that window. So I think it's a great deal. And then I would also finally say this, that there's kind of a hidden value in getting it done now. Now, it's not like the Pacers line, this was going to happen. You were going to sign him. It's not, they lined it up. But, the way these max deals works is Pascal gets 30% of their salary cap this year, and then it gets an 8% raise every year thereafter. The NBA is about to sign a new TV rights deal that is going to increase the cap by probably 10 to 12% every year. So every year the cap increase is going to outpace Pascal, even and Tyrese's increase in their salary. So he's going to become a less than, it's not going to be 30% of the cap for the next 4 years. In 4 years, this will look like a better deal when you start seeing max contracts that are 50, 60, $70 million a year.
So the fact that Pacers were able to lock both up to kind of long-term deals as the cap's going to continue to increase pretty significantly, like that's important. Like there's a window here right now to kind of lock things down. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited too because we never really got to see the full iteration of healthy Tyrese, healthy Pascal, and certainly didn't get to see like them trying to, they didn't have a lot of practices together, I guess
Right.
is what I'm saying. In a mid-season acquisition, that's not abnormal. And so I'm excited to kind of see what they do next season with both of them now that they have opportunities to, A, see how teams guarded both, but B, just be able to mesh together better, be able to practice together, have a training camp together, be able to install things that work for both, both offensively and defensively perhaps too. Maybe they can find some things defensively that will help lock teams down, with Pascal in there. So I'm super excited about it. It's a great 1-2 punch for, a team with a lot of young assets as well. So, it's Indiana moving in the right direction, and I'm excited about that.
And also Pascal plays like all of the time versus, you look at the other guy who is available, OG Anunoby, who maybe has a higher upside defensively, but if he's not on the court, what does that really matter? I mean, Pascal is just, lock him down for 71 to 80 games a year. I mean, he's just, you look at his time in Toronto, it's just he's playing every single night. So I think that's key as well. I would also say this. I think this is, hats off to the Pacers. Maybe it shouldn't have taken this long, but I think this is the first time they've had two max guys, on the team, and it shows their ability to kind of go, they're going to be right at the luxury tax, maybe a little bit over, depending. We'll talk about what we think they should do with some of the other guys on the roster here, but they could be over the tax for probably the first time in recent in history, like 20 years probably.
Yeah.
So it's good to see them doing this and, kind of saying like, all right, we're going to really try and win, as opposed to where it's always been, feels like the Pacers like, hey man, we're not going to spend a ton. We're never going to bottom out. That's a good thing, but we're never going to really push all of our chips in. I don't think they pushed all their chips in, but it does feel like they're ready to sit at the table.
Yeah, and I think part of that is the run they just went on. I think they got a little bit ahead of schedule, but now, like, to me, you have to capitalize on that. You got kind of showcased on a national level. I think even though they got swept, they gave the Celtics their best series.
I agree. I think no question they gave the Celtics the best series in the playoffs.
The Mavs obviously beat them by like 38 in game 4, whatever that was. But outside of that, none of the games were really all that competitive. It was kind of a boring NBA Finals. Obviously, previous to that, the Celtics played the Heat, and then they played
Cavs.
Philly or Cavs, yeah. And so, yeah. So to me, it's like the Pacers were showcased on a national scale. I think it was game 1 or game 2. They brought Derek White onto the set after the game and asked about the differences regarding the Mavs versus guarding the Pacers, and he was just like, "Dude, the Pacers are really hard to guard." Like,
Yeah.
didn't really even like talk about like, man, Luka is like the best and all that. He was just like, the Pacers are tough to guard. So to me, it's like, all right, you got a little bit ahead of schedule, but now you got to capitalize on that. Like, you don't want to become the 2020 Hawks or whatever that made an Eastern Conference Finals run and then just have basically bottomed out from there, and now they're talking about a rebuild. So I like what the Pacers are doing, but I do think that, like, all right, you're coming into your first Tyrese Halliburton window. I think you're going to have 2 windows with him to kind of go all in for a run, and I think you're coming into that first one right about now.
So as you look at the rest of the roster, where this puts you, so Tyrese and Siakam have the same contract. When you go down the rest of the the roster, when you look at it from a, who salary perspective, the next highest paid is Miles Turner, Aaron Nesmith. Oddly, TJ McConnell is the fifth highest paid player on this team. And by the way, I just want to caveat here. This is where NBA, I find this fun and interesting. As Tony and I talk about this, it's not about how good you are. It's like how good you are compared to the salary that you're taking from the team. So I think TJ McConnell's fantastic. I think he's awesome. He's a great 6-man, a great second unit guy. The question then comes, like, is that worth the $9.5 million you're paying him to be 5th highest paid on the team, or is that better suited somewhere else? I look at that as, I've been kind of looking at, I was on the last pod, I kind of joked like that would be a great spot to flip for like Alex Caruso. Well, Caruso's now off the table because he got traded. So people are obviously thinking what I'm thinking. This is why I should be a GM. But I don't know, man. The next 2 questions coming for the Pacers are, you have Obi Toppin. You also have, oddly now comes Andrew Nembhard's, he's extension eligible. TJ McConnell, his contract becomes guaranteed the day after the NBA draft. It's still tradable. So I look at those as the next 3 main decisions this team has to make is, obviously you're going to just guarantee McConnell, but do you keep McConnell at that price range? Do you, Obi Toppin, I think no matter what, you at least give him an offer, but if somebody comes in with a larger offer, you have the chance to match it. Do you do that? And then you have
I'm of a different school of thought on Toppin. Right, I loved what he gave the Pacers this year. I thought he fit in perfectly. I think that what he brings to the team is a great dynamic. However, he's not a good defender, and that's really what they need. Like,
right.
They don't. I love the second unit. It's what makes this Pacers team, but I want to see Jarris Walker play. And if you re-sign Obi, you got to play him, but then you're in this conundrum with Walker. So, then you're looking at trading things, and maybe that's what you're getting at here. But to me, I want to see Walker play, and if you re-sign Obi, I don't know that you see him play unless it's, they're a logjam there.
No, I agree. It's they have 2 log jams. They have a log jam there, and they have a log jam at point guard. You brought it up, so we'll stay on the Obi thing. It's tough. I agree with you. I think Obi plays great in this system. I even think if you re-sign him at $6 million, I think you're in the kind of the problem you talked about is that you have, you need to play Jarris Walker. Like you have to, at some point you have to do something with Jarris Walker. You just cannot punt a mid lottery pick into the sun. Like you either need to play him or trade him. Like you cannot keep him in the G League again, making $6.5 million. Cause I mean, dude, he'll be extension eligible the end of next season. It's like, you got to do something. You got to know what you have there. So yeah, you have to play him. You have Jalen Smith on the team. You have Isaiah Jackson. You have Mathurin coming back. Like Mathurin is going to take a spot. Like you're right. There's a logjam in kind of that small forward, power forward position. And I think I joked about it with you and Dust on the last 2 pods. Like to me, Obi's kind of like all right, Tyrese, like you get fun pieces like this if you can play defense better. Like, we'll give you more toys, but until then, like, we've got to get you a defensive stopper. That's why I thought Caruso actually would have been perfect. Like, Caruso would have been a great add to this team.
Yes.
But that's not going to happen. So I agree with you in that. The other one comes at, the point guard position. So, Tyrese Halliburton, should we trade him? No, I'm just kidding. So he's locked in. But you have McConnell and you have Nembhard, who both played out in the playoffs. Like, they both showed they are key players here. The difference is McConnell's contracted next year for $9.5 million guaranteed. He'll be 33 next year. He's 32 this year. Nembhard's 24, not super young when you look at it. Like, he played his full year in college, but he's going to be, contract eligible or extension eligible this offseason. He'll be making $2 million next year, and then a team option for 2.1. But if you don't give him the contract extension, he will be leaving at the end of that time. And there's also just a world of, like, if you're Andrew Nembhard, you just showed, like, hey man, I can lead a team in the playoffs, and, like, small guards are back. I just don't even know if Nembhard I don't say wants to be here, like, for this, but it's like he has his own aspirations, and those are going to be stymied by Tyrese Halliburton being here. You're never going to run the full team, or you're going to have to play shooting guard on the starting lineup. And so I wonder, what the best option is between those two guys. But I also don't know if you can, was this the apex of what you're going to get out of McConnell? Is it all going to be diminishing returns from here? So I'm actually not sure what the best move is here with these two guys. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting to note about Nembhard is he and Siakam share the same agent, and seems the Pacers have a really good relationship with that particular agent. So I do think that factors in.
Even more so now that agent just got like $18 million from the Pacers, but yeah.
So I think that factors in too, to, like, because I've thought about this, and we kind of talked about this. Like, was this like a fluke run by Nembhard, or is this what you're going to get from him? And if you kind of think it was a fluke run, like, you strike where the iron's hot and maybe you move him. But at the same time, it's like, what a value he is at $2 million the next 2 seasons if he's going to put up any sort of performances like he did there. But, like, there were times in this playoffs when Halliburton was playing, you and I both were like text each other like, too much Nembhard.
Yep.
Yep. So it you don't want to get tunnel vision on, the last 3 games of what he did, but more so, how did he fit into this team for 82? And I think I love him. Don't get me wrong. I love the way he plays. I think he's like the definition of, like, what people call dog. Like, just a gamer, doesn't shy away from the moment, and all those things are important to have. But if you look at the bigger picture, if they did move off of him because somebody really likes what they see and they want him to be their top guy, and you're able to get some assets in return that can help you maybe defensively or whatever the case may be, like, I think it's a little bit easier to kind of, like, go, okay, like, I can move off of him. I look at the bigger picture of what he did all season. With that said, it would be really hard.
I agree. I mean, I think either one of these is hard. I think if both of these guys are on the team for all of next year, I hate to say this, but I think the Pacers are squandering an opportunity, because I look at this run, and this is what happens on all playoff runs. Teams that get deep in the playoffs, you have a lot of guys who are playing some of their best basketball. It's just the way it is. Yeah, we had a lot of teams we played with injuries, whatever. We still beat a lot of teams. We still beat the Knicks in a Game 7 in Madison Square Garden. You have TJ McConnell this is the high that he's ever going to get. I don't mean that a knock. It's just like, at 32 years old, looking like an absolute stud in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, that's a pretty high. I have a hard time. Maybe it stays this way. I just, it's not going to be this way for the next 5 or 6 years. Nembhard, there's a world where this was as high as it gets. There's a world where it goes even higher. So, I mean, there's always that possibility. Toppin looked really good. There's a world where maybe you do a sign and trade with Toppin. I looked at this team, and it's like, there's a lot of guys who are kind of at, using the stock analogy, like I've done many times before, like, this is their 52-week high. Like, they are at their high level, and you can't keep all of these guys. And as you mentioned, just from a playing perspective, there's a logjam in all of these positions. That's the good thing about having a deep team. I do think if you're the Pacers, you got to kind of pick one way or the other. And do you say, to me, I think the move would be, Nembhard is younger. Nembhard's on a better contract, but I just don't know what Nembhard's role is over the next 5 years on this team, because he's probably going to want to lead a team. As you mentioned, when everyone's out there is a feel of like, this is too much Nembhard. When Halliburton was out, Nembhard was great. There's a world where like he just maybe needs to go run his own team, like just go be this starting point guard on the Wizards or something. Just go take a team and go be the leader and get a bunch of shots. Maybe that's best for him. And then you get McConnell for another year. Maybe you can sign him to a team friendlier deal for 2 more years. He's a fantastic backup to Halliburton, and I don't think that McConnell's like, man, I can go run my own team as a starting point guard at 33.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like one thing that's worth keeping in mind too is like that Pacers team that went on that run in 2013. They traded away Danny Granger, who wasn't like the Danny Granger he once was, and it like just completely pissed off the locker room.
Yep.
The locker room wasn't the same. They brought in Evan Turner. People didn't like him. And the season from that point forward kind of went downhill. And so to me, that McConnell's like that Danny Granger piece to me. I feel like he's kind of got the heartbeat of the team. He's got the heartbeat of the city. Coach loves him. They fly in his private jet together to games.
Yep.
And so to me, McConnell's that piece where he brings more value than just what he does on the court, I think. And, if you moved off of him, I fear that you kind of lose that edge that he brings. Whereas if you move off of Nembhard, it's like, okay, that stinks. And he's a really good player and all those things. But, at some point, like Benedict Mathurin's going to want a starting spot. And there's not really a spot right now if you're keeping Nembhard at that too. So it's just like there's so many young pieces that are hungry, which is great, but at some point, you got to kind of make some moves to not only appease some of those guys, but just like to make sense for your roster.
Yep. No, I completely agree. And it does feel like now is the time. I mean, or maybe you bring everyone back. The thing is, if you move Nembhard, then comes like, what are you looking to get back? Because now it also comes the question of, do you then maybe package a couple more pieces to get something big back? Because if you trade Nembhard for just another Nembhard type player, it's like you have the same problem of like the logjam.
Right.
Like we're almost at a point we got to move like 3 guys to get one back. Or if you trade Nembhard for some pieces and draft picks, like, okay, great. Our draft pick's going to be needed on this team just because we have Walker, who was a lottery pick, who we're not playing. So it's like, do we need more lottery picks of guys who we're not signing? And I hope it's not one of these like, hey, we traded him for 5 second rounders. Like, great, more second rounders. Even though Nembhard we're doing great in the second round. I mean, it does feel like we have a log jam of. It's funny, we do this with IU basketball all the time, where at the beginning of the year, it's like, oh man, where are we going to get all this playing time? And then it's like at the end of the year, it's like none of these guys can play. I feel like it is different with this team because we haven't even mentioned, Ben Shepherd, who played well in the playoffs. You touched on it for a second, but you have Mathurin. Like Mathurin's going to want to come back and start. Walker was a lottery pick. He's going to want to play. You have a lot of guys who've shown they can play and want to have minutes, and you're going to need to make room for all of these guys. And it does feel like they're at a point where they probably need to move off a couple of these pieces. I just don't know. I'm not sure what the Pacers are going to do here because I don't see them doing, 4-for-1 and going for a third max player. That would be very un-Pacers like. It would be against everything they've been saying of like, this is part of the process. I see them just making small moves around the margins. But as I look at it, it's like you have, between Nesmith and Nembhard and Jarris Walker and Mathurin, you have a lot of talented players on really good contracts. And you can keep that, but at some point, very quickly in the next year or two, they don't become nice contracts and they become way less tradable. So you're at a point where you really could trade 2 or 3 of those guys for a massive contract. There's a lot of value in what the Pacers have right now on their roster.
Yeah, and the other one, Miles Turner is now coming into the last year of his deal.
Yes, that's the next thing I was going to talk about.
And he's a $20 million a year. The Pacers did him a solid front loading this contract that he's on. So, it's actually a little bit more than what these numbers say, but he's he's playing at a level right now where I think that he's probably going to warrant more than 20 million, or he's at least going to get some offers from teams more than 20 million. He's seemingly been a coveted piece all around the league his entire career. So, that's an interesting one. Like, I don't know if you'd be able to re-sign him after this season. So do you look at that and go, do we move off of this? Like, I don't think you do, but it's when you come into the last year deals, things start getting funky because it's like you got to figure out what's that person's value this season. Can you get them re-signed? What's their value beyond? Like, there's just, you don't want to lose them for nothing. So there's just a lot of funky stuff, that you have to factor in there.
And I think because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I need to look this up, I'm pretty sure because he was offered a shorter extension, I don't think he's eligible for any kind of extension. Like, he is just going to be a completely restricted free agent at the end of the end of next season. Sorry, unrestricted. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, yes. Completely unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, this upcoming season. And that's tough to just let that walk. So I think they're going to have to, either have really good assurances or probably going to have to move him because they can't re-sign him.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because he's on great value, but he's the third highest paid Pacer. So if you talk about moving 3 pieces for 1 or something like that, if you did, get into trading for another max guy, he's probably a piece you got to move if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Just based on money alone. And then if it's like a Paul George or something, maybe you add a Neesmith into that as well to kind of match salaries a little bit. Because he's coming into $11 million.
I have just one. I'm gonna stop here for a sec. I have a thought that really effing annoys me. It's like the Pacers just had a great run. And let me pull up the team I'm thinking about here. The Pacers just had a great run. They have a lot of players on really low-level contracts. We just, Halliburton's max hasn't kicked in yet. We just signed Siakam to his max. And yet we're looking at this and we're like, man, it's like it's going to happen really quick where we got to make a lot of tough decisions because we're going to have to figure out what we do with Turner, like Nembhard. And it's like if we sign both of those guys, suddenly we're in the second apron like that before you know it. Is it not seem unfair? The Celtics just won the title, and everybody's like, "Oh man, they're set up great for the next couple of years." It's like, dude, they have Brown and Tatum and Porzingis and Drew Holiday. Like Drew Holiday's making $36 million, Porzingis is making $36 million, Tatum's making 32, Brown's 31, Derek White's making 18. Like, how is this possible? Like, we have a bunch of guys making $3 million. Like, and it's like, I don't understand how we're so screwed, and yet teams like the Celtics they continue to add what seemingly are like 5 more max guys, and it keeps happening. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Yeah, one thing with the Pacers too that is like now that we're out of the playoffs, like I was fully in the camp of like, look, you play against who you play against, and like this was an awesome run. And I had so much fun watching them go to the Eastern Conference Finals and all that.
Yep.
But I do think there is a bit of fool's gold there, that you again, you play who you play, but they got a very fortuitous matchups each round. So like, let's say they play Giannis and Dame fully healthy and they lose in the first round because that's what would have been projected to happen, right? They were the 6th seed throughout the whole season. They were as low as the 8th seed with like 2 games left in the season. So I do think there is a bigger picture of like this run was fun. This team is young, but they weren't like world beaters all season. They lost some games they shouldn't have lost, like by a lot. And so I do think that, and I think this is how Buchanan and Pritchard are probably looking at it too, of like the 40,000 foot view of the season as a whole. And you still do have some things that you need to fix. And so how do you fix them? Do you project your current roster to do those things, or are there pieces out there that can help you get to that next level? Because I think we both agree, like, I think they're in the second tier of NBA teams, but I do think that the first tier, they're not quite there yet.
No, I completely agree. And I also think looking at it big picture, now that we're taking a step back from the playoffs, I look at this too, and you don't want to get too far down this road. But if you just look at kind of a quick, 2-year window ahead, it's like, all right, man, like as I was just joking, like the Celtics look locked and loaded to be really good again next year. So, you don't want to start assuming losses already, but I don't think there's anything the Pacers could do to make themselves a better team than the Celtics this offseason. Maybe as guys get better, it's like kind of like a storm. It's like there's a storm cloud. Like you kind of wait for that this will pass. Like the Celtics will get in a spot in a year or 2 years where they're going to have to make some really tough choices or be in the second apron. And I heard something about draft picks in the second apron. I'll run by you that I thought was interesting. Yep. Like they freeze. So like in 7 years, your pick freezes to where you're at. So basically you could lose good picks in 7 years if you're back-to-back second apron year after year. Some wild stuff. Anyway, I do think if you're the Pacers, you look at the East, and it's like, all right, we're not going to get past the Celtics in the next year or two. If Giannis is right, we're probably not getting past the Bucks. But then you look at the rest of the landscape, it's like, all right, obviously things will continue to change, but it's like, all right, man, the Knicks might reload a little bit. We'll see. In 2 or 3 years, the Celtics will be theoretically on their downslide. Let's hope so. The Bucks definitely will be downsliding. The Cavs, who knows what they're going to do? The Magic might be a problem, so let's just try and keep up with them. The Sixers, probably not. The Heat are always a wild card because they can pull whoever. But like the Bulls are in a rebuild. The Hawks are in a rebuild. The Nets, the Raptors are in rebuilds. The Wizards, the Hornets, who knows? The Wizards are a hot mess. And the Pistons, I texted you, man, the Pistons are like a complete mess. So you look at the East and it's kind of like, all right, man, like if we could just weather the storm for 2 years, that's when maybe the skies open up and we have a real path to go at it. So I agree with you too, that right now is kind of like, let's tread water. Let's stay at pace with the Magic if we can, and wait for kind of this Celtics Death Star to kind of float away in hopefully 2 years, or at least give us a spot where we can go at it. But it doesn't feel like right now is the time to go at it.
Yeah. And, I think the best case scenario for the Pacers is you try to be a 2 seed, and then you can make the Eastern Conference Finals, and you hope that, you get hot, you strike lightning in a bottle. There's an injury to the Celtics or whatever, but like fully healthy, the Celtics are going to be really damn tough to beat.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's going to be a couple of years of that. And so I'm with you. I think the Pacers certainly can't take a step backward, because that would kind of put a wrench in everything. Obviously, barring health and all of that. You got to take a step forward, certainly, because that's part of kind of when you commit to, I don't know, they called it a retool and not a rebuild or whatever with Halliburton when they traded for him. But they've done everything right to this point. So I've just got so much confidence in their front office to like continue on this path forward without trying to like skip steps.
Yeah.
But at some point, they're going to have to do that all in. But I think you and I are both kind of saying, like, I don't know that this is the offseason you do that.
I agree, but this might be the season you do it. Because you're again, just based on the contracts, you're looking at Turner, McConnell, Jalen Smith, and Isaiah Jackson. So Jalen Smith's got a player option we got to figure out. Isaiah Jackson has a team option. So Smith, player option, Jackson, team option. But you have 4 guys there that are all, and I'm not sure exactly where their re-signability mark is, but, you got 4 guys that are going to be, unrestricted free agents at the end of next season, or just free agents. I'm not sure what their restricted status is, but like with a Turner, you either go into the offseason next year with the ability of losing him, or you're really hoping you can re-sign him. But I think having 4 guys like that who all have real value, I'm not sure you can just allow all 4 of those to walk. And so I think you have to look at, maybe we do package those 4 guys, or 3 and another piece that we'd mentioned earlier, and try and get something back that's a little more locked in. Because the Turner one is really, they're in a tough spot because they've built up a lot of goodwill with Turner. They've never moved him all the times he's been on the trade block forever. Maybe they just couldn't find the right deal for him. Although I do think they would have moved him for DeAndre Ayton. Like that was pretty obvious. They made the restricted offer on DeAndre Ayton. They would have had, that would have not made Turner happy. but they front loaded his contract. They gave him a bunch of money. They didn't have to. He's been here a while. He seems to be happy here.
Yeah, that was their apology.
Yeah, pretty much.
Trying to sign Ayton.
But now you're at a point where if they don't trade Turner this season, you go into the offseason where it's like you're in a tough spot, because I don't know if you can sign Turner to a 5-year max deal. I mean, Turner's not a max player.
Right.
And I'm not sure he's worth $20 million in the current structure of the NBA. Players like that at $20 million are tough. And it's a Bill Simmons thing. I agree with it. Like, the max deals don't kill you. Normally, unless you just sign the completely wrong guy. The, $10, $50 million deals don't kill you. It's those almost max deals that kill you. When you sign a guy 4 years to $29, $32 million, if they are not at that high elite level, that's what crushes you as an organization. And, Turner's been awesome, but I'm not sure he's worth, almost a max deal.
Yeah, it's tough, man, because I love Miles, and he's been loyal to the organization and all that good stuff. But I'm with you in terms of value, and the value he brings is certainly he stretches the floor offensively and protects the rim on defense. Like, those are the two things that he does very, very well. Defensively, the Pacers stink anyway.
Yeah.
Even with his rim protection ability. Offensively, can you find somebody else that can do similar things at a less value on the contract? So it's tough, man.
But if you move him this year, you're going to need height. I mean, now you're
right,
and again with Smith and Jackson, it's like you move those guys, you got nothing. I mean, you are really. It's like, hey, like I'm looking at the lineup. It's like, James Johnson, you want to come back? I'm like, seriously, I don't know who your starting center is at that point. That is, you have most of your front court is going to be a free agent. Yeah. Or do you sign Giannis's brother and just get an Antetokounmpo and try and get Giannis here?
Please no. Please no. I can't handle that.
No, I mean, so it's a real question the Pacers have. I don't know. I literally, as a podcast, we probably have a take. I think their move is probably that you got to trade him at some point this upcoming season, because, for them to keep him on this team, you would want probably like a 3-year deal with him making like 12 to 14 million a year. Like that would be what would be the most team friendly deal possible. I don't think you want
to get Hartenstein.
Yeah, no, I mean, seriously. Well, because the thing is, if you look at Miles, at the end of this next season, he'll be 29. If you sign him for a 3-year deal after this next season, so I'm thinking of the 25, 6, 7 seasons, he'll be getting 31, 32, 33. That's not ideal territory for a big guy. He's a guy who already has some deficiencies offensively and defensively. If you're paying that spot $20+ million, like 24, 26, 27, you've now locked your team in. Like, that's locked in. There's no way for you to get another max spot. That is your team. And I'm not sure that team is good enough to compete for a title. So it's like, do you think you can? It's tough to say, all right, man, you're going to let him hit free agency and then also try and get him on a steal. That's a tough ask. It's also really tough when that's one of your best assets that's going to be trade eligible over the next couple of years. To let that walk for absolutely nothing is also tough. And I think he has a lot of value around the league. I think at the trade deadline, a team getting a guy like Turner would be a real plus.
Yeah, that's going to be one that's interesting to watch, because it's like we said, there's so much value to what he brings, but if you just let it walk away for nothing, and you've got to try to find a starting caliber center in free agency next season that's on, going to try to get him at a value, it's going to be really hard. And also trading wise, they're in a unique spot where like you said, the Pacers are, hopefully they're competing for a playoff seed next year. So that means that when you're looking to, if you decide to trade him next year and still compete for the playoffs, which is what they should do, you don't want to trade him to an East team. So then it's like you've already cut the number of trade partners in half. You're just going to trade him to the West. And then there's going to be 3 or 4 West teams that are going to be tanking. So
you're down to like 7 suitors. So it's going to be a very slim, even though it seems like he has a lot of value, you're going to make it a slim market also. It's a tough one, man. I don't know what to do, because the idea of letting him walk is tough. And the idea of having to overpay to keep him in free agency is also tough.
Yeah, especially when you look at the fit. The Pacers offense was very, very dynamic this season, and a lot of it is, the gravity that Miles has to set screens and pop and all that good stuff, and hit threes at 36 to 38% clip. So yeah, that'll be an interesting one to watch.
Is there
or maybe it won't be. Maybe it'll just be very status quo. Play the whole season without any talk of trade, and they somehow re-sign him in free agency next season for $20 million.
That's possible too. But I mean, at some point you have to start making some changes. I mean, that's the thing with this team is, defense was a major problem. I think that offense, there's a way for the offense to get better without changing the pieces. I'm not sure I see a way for the defense to get better without changing the pieces. So I do think that just keeping the status quo, I mean, that's part of the trouble of, you get to really like these teams and these players, but you can't just run the same core back year after year. And even back in the day when you and I grew up, it's like, oh man, I love those teams. Like the Pacers were always, they'd add Detlef Schrempf, and then they'd add Derek McKee, and pieces, Haywood Workman would go. The Bulls had a great run, but it's like they Pippen and Jordan are the only guys that stayed through that whole thing. They entirely revamped that roster, over the course of the 2 3-peats, and even within the 2 3-peats, there was small changes here and there.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's fun. It's exciting, as podcasters talking about all the different scenarios that could happen. And this is just us kind of spitballing in our heads. Think of what's happening like in the front office. They probably got whiteboards everywhere, just of different scenarios that to play out, and it'd be fun to be a fly on the wall in those conversations happening right now, because I'm sure they're looking at a million different scenarios of how their roster could shake out.
So real quick, here's the deadline's coming up for the Pacers. You tell me what you think is going to happen. So TJ McConnell's contract is guaranteed. Do you think he gets an extension, or do they run him back with the last year of his option?
I think they just run him back.
Okay.
I don't think he gets an extension.
It's funny. I'm on Sport Track. The Pacers still have the Bruce Brown option. I don't think they're picking that club option up. I think that went to the Raptors. So I think that needs to be updated. That'd be a wild, like, hey, man, we're just going to go ahead and re-sign. We're taking that option back. Yeah, come on back. You guys screwed up the wording in the trade.
It's like a European, just send him out on a loan for half the season and get him back.
Jalen Smith has a player option. Do you think he picks that up?
That one's interesting to me, because I would think, because like I don't think he's going to get much more money than that, but he might just give it up to go find a spot that he thinks he can play like all the time. So that one, I'm going to say no, but I think financially that might not be the best decision for him, but I think he wants to play.
I agree. That one will be interesting, because I will say read the tea leaves on that. If he picks up his player option, then I think he becomes extension eligible. If the Pacers give him a nice extension, even in that $5 or $6 million range, if they give him a 2 or 3 year extension, I do wonder if that's like, all right, this might be our Miles, half price replacement. If they let him walk, maybe that means we're going to try and run the dice with Miles. I don't know. I would keep an eye on that one. Obi, you don't think they're going to make an offer? You think they're just going to let Obi go into free agency? Or you think they'll give him an offer and try and see if a team will match a good deal offer?
That's another one where it's kind of a tea leaves thing, because it's like if they give Obi a deal, or offer him, they've got to be looking at that logjam and thinking they're going to trade some pieces there. If they don't, then I think it's one of those things where it's like, all right, we're gonna play Jarris Walker more this year. We like what we have there. We got to see him play. So that's another one where it's kind of a tea leaf situation on what they do with Obi. But to me, Obi Toppin's one of those dudes, like some team like the Wizards or something, just gives him an offer he can't refuse, where it's like, it's like they're so far out of the realm of reality of what his value actually is, because he made a good run in the playoffs, that they just give him like some asinine contract where he's like, okay, yeah, I gotta do this.
The last one is on July 22nd. Andrew Nembhard becomes extension eligible. What do you think happens there?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because he still has 2 years left on his deal, right?
Yeah, so next year he'll make $2 million guaranteed, and then in 25-26
team option, right?
He has a team option at 2.1.
To me, I think they let it ride a
I
little bit.
I think so too. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's why it's wild because when you look at suddenly then October of this year, so October of 2024, Ben Shepherd, Jarris Walker, and Benedict Mathurin all have club options available to them. Like it happens so damn fast.
And and then you're like, you love the pieces, you like the potential of some of it, and then you're just like, what do you do? And that's
Well, this is, I will give you and I credit on this. This is why you unless there's a massive injury, you can't stash this high of a lottery pick this long because, you're not going to be able to, October 31st, 2024, even if Walker comes out of the gate and is just great in the first 4 weeks of this coming season, you're not like, is it because it's just like that's such a small sample size? Like you have no idea if you have something there with Walker. Like I know more about Ben Shepherd now. It's like Ben Shepherd's like, yeah, man, I would give him a nice $4 to $5 million contract. Like he's a piece.
Right.
He's a dude. Mathurin, it's like that's the trouble with just stashing Walker for a year. It's like it's going to come really quick where he's going to want, that option's up. And
well, it's kind of like what Phoenix did with Jalen Smith.
yeah,
They stashed him and then like didn't really know what they had in him, and then the Pacers like, all right, we'll give him a whirl. Like they denied his team
great
option.
Call. Yeah, great call. So anyway, that is I'm going to go bigger picture NBA unless you have other Pacers thoughts.
No, I'm excited. Like I'm intrigued. They very easily could just like kind of run things back, but they very easily too could be a lot of movement here. So I'm intrigued on what we'll see here in the next month or so.
And it's going to happen quick because you have the draft is next week. I think 27th, maybe.
Yeah, it's the first time they're doing it in 2 separate days. So it's like first round's Thursday, second round's Friday,
and then July 1st is the first day of free agency. Correct. So that's when it all starts to hit the fan. That's when you're getting a lot of these decisions are going to be made.
That's when you turn on the tweet notifications for
Woj and Shams. Yeah. I want to ask you this. We texted a little bit about it. Just we're not fans, we're observers. What a hot effing mess the Pistons are. Like, what is going on there? So you've had since 2019, they've had a lottery pick. I think 4 of the 5 years they've had the number 1 pick. In the draft, they had that. They've had 5 lottery picks. Teams have done this kind of before, but they're almost at a point. But then this year, they showed no signs of anything. They signed Monty Williams to this huge coaching contract, which really doesn't make a lot of sense.
Recruited him, like really went full court press. We're gonna pay you so much money. Like he moved his family out there. Like it was a full court press to get him to be their coach.
And then fired him, guaranteed like $65 million. They're a hot mess. Like I like looking at their roster and be like, who can we poach? Because I don't know what the hell's going on over there.
Yeah, and I love it because they're my most despised franchise in sports, besides like the New England Patriots, just based on the brawl. And then watching the documentary on the brawl reinvigorated that hate. So I love seeing the Detroit Pistons just struggle and just, like you said, just a hot mess. I mean, a clown show over there. Of how they're operating. And apparently it came from ownership, like the same group that lured him there. Like it wasn't like, hey, we got a new GM, and so, he wants to go a different direction. Like this came from ownership. Like bizarre. I would hate to be a Pistons fan right now because, like you said, like they should be coming into a window right now where like they've got all these great pieces that are young. Like they should be like in a similar window to what the Thunder were like last 2 years ago or whatever. Like your young pieces start coming to fruition, and they're just a hot effing mess, and it's glorious.
Well, you look at it, it's like Cade Cunningham is coming into he should be getting his max extension now. And it's like, do you give him the extension or do you just blow it up? I mean, this is where if you're a Pacers fan, you look at this roster, it's like, all right, they have James Wiseman, 23 years old, $12 million a year. Maybe this is a distressed asset. Again, a guy who I'm not sure is good, but is also really young and has he's a perfect Pacers player, like the high draft pedigree who maybe hasn't figured it out in the NBA, a la Oladipo or Jalen Smith. Maybe that's the piece you go after if you're the Pacers as kind of a Turner type replacement. And like maybe you look to put $15 million there. Jalen Duren is there at 20 years old. I think they might want to keep him, but he's another piece that maybe that's a Turner replacement. I look at and even like, Jaden Ivey is great. I think he fits into a logjam here where it's like, I'm not sure where he plays or the playing time he gets, but maybe you move off of Mathurin and go with Ivy. I think they're a roster that probably every team in the NBA is looking to just completely poach.
Yeah, and rightfully so, because you're probably going to get a good deal because they seem completely incompetent. Now, granted, they have a new front office now, but yeah, I'm just glad I'm not a fan of the Detroit Pistons because it's just ugly up there, and I don't know how. I don't know how they fix it. It's gonna, they basically have to rebuild on their rebuild, and so
it's not good. The other one I'll just bring up is I don't know how you pry him away, but maybe you put a package together. It was Zion on our last podcast mentioned Jaden McDaniels off the Timberwolves, which I absolutely loved. He's locked into a really long contract. It's again the Timberwolves are in a salary problem as well. He's got a guaranteed $134 million contract, just a huge number, but it's not that bad year to year. It's like 22, 24, 26. He's one. The more Zion talked about that, I'm like, that actually, I don't know how you pry him away, and that probably is going to need to be, Nembhard and Turner, and maybe even like a Mathurin to get him. But that could be a really interesting piece for the Pacers and provide a lot of that defense they need.
Yeah, he's like, the dream, because it's, again, like you said, defense. Like they certainly have to upgrade defensively, whether that be, just guys progressing. Like, to me, the head of the snake is Tyrese Halliburton. Like, as long as he remains kind of in his thin stature, which I think he's going to, just based on going to the Olympics and not being able to train this offseason, as we've talked about, he's a max level player and he's just being absolutely hunted on defense. Like, before he got hurt in that Celtics series, like, they were just finding out who he was guarding, setting a ball screen, and then they were switching it, or they were hard hedging, and then they were figuring out the hard hedges really quickly. And so Tyrese definitely has to get better at defense. But yeah, if you can get somebody like that into the mix that just kind of changes the dynamic of how your defense operates, I'm in.
Yeah. Last thing I just wanted to share with you. This is from Bill Simmons' podcast. Just more want to get your take on it on the pod. So this is pod recapping pod. So we're definitely in meta territory here. But he had this again, looking at it from a Celtics perspective. He was joking, but there was a world. I don't think the Pacers can play in this world, but it was funny because he's like, the Celtics, they're drafting is like, they of course, plentiful riches. Whoever they draft is going to be stashed. They really have nowhere to play them. He's like, well, if we're drafting the end of the first round, we're just going to stash somebody. It's like, why don't we just draft Bronny? Like, just draft him. And then he's like, then, he has value in that other teams might want to get him for the ability to get LeBron, but they probably don't want to draft him. There's like, but if we draft him, it's like he has trade value. It's like, then you just grab him. Like, all right, man, Lakers, what do you want? Like, do you want like LeBron? Do you want to play with your son? Like, because he's not playing in the NBA the next 2 years. Like, do you want to give up a second round pick for it, or give up 2 firsts in this? Like, it was funny, and then I thought about it. I'm like, there's some logic to that. They also, on his pod, they joked about, having LeBron do the, like, give me back my son video. But, like, I wonder, this draft has been lamented hard this year. I'm not sure who to get excited about in this draft. Maybe we can see where Khalil Ware goes as Indiana fans. But I do think Bronny's going to be a topic because LeBron has made him a topic. I
think the biggest part with Bronny of doing that with the Celtics is that you pissed off Clutch.
Yes.
Right. And then, all your Clutch players don't want to go play for your franchise or whatever. Like, that's the one thing that they kind of have them by the balls. Is like, you're representing a lot of really, really tough players in the league. So that's like the one thing that I keep coming back to of like, why doesn't a team just screw them over and just be like, all right, because nothing's stopping you technically from doing that.
Yeah. And what's funny is like, I hear this and I do not disagree with you on the agent part, but it's like, this never seems to work the other way. Like, teams will do all of this stuff to help out agents, and then like the Knicks will do all this, and it's like LeBron doesn't take a meeting with the Knicks when he's available. It's like this never seems to pay off. And then, you can say like, I mean, you can't piss off Clutch, but it's like, all right, but if, you have a max spot and there's no other max spots, the player is going to sign there, whether you pissed off Clutch 3 years ago or not. So like, I do wonder if I just think the Bronny thing is going to be interesting to see where he goes. And if a team gets him trying to get LeBron, or I love the idea of a team just getting him and then being like, all right, man, like who wants LeBron? Like who wants a shot at this?
Yeah, I saw a Rich Paul interview the other day that they were like, he was trying to say like, there's no guarantee LeBron signs with whoever drafts Bronny, because if that was the case, I'd make the Lakers pick him at 17. It's like, yeah, it's crazy.
Well, and this is, I mean, LeBron is a big part of the NBA. We're an NBA podcast. The thing with this whole story that kind of drives me mad is you and I both have kids. So there's a part where early on, the last couple of months, LeBron has taken this, hey man, like lay off, man. He's a kid. He's 19, lay off all this, which as a parent, I get. Like, I totally, completely get that. But on the flip side, it's like, wasn't it a year or two ago, LeBron was tweeting like about his son, like, man, this guy, second best player on the Lakers if we had him right now. And it's like, well, you don't get it both ways. Like, and then,
Right.
And then LeBron's like, hinting about how I want to, I'd love to play with my son. Like LeBron is the one who said that. Like, as best I can tell, Bronny's never said anything. So there's a part of me where like, I feel as a father, it's like, I wouldn't want to see my kid going through this, but it's also like, this is happening because LeBron did all of this. Like if LeBron just came out and said, hey man, like that's my son. Like I'm not going to play. Like that's insane. That's not going to happen. Like, I just hope he has a great career. I personally think he should stay at USC one more year. If he said something like that, this wouldn't be as big of a story. This is becoming a story because LeBron makes it a story. And then to be like, hey man, lay off him. He's only 19. It's like, that really bothers me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He it's like, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions, it's
Right.
like one of those scenarios. I'm with you on that. Yeah. I think, yeah, he's kind of laying in the bed that he made and doesn't like it. And so.
And I feel bad for Bronny. I do. I mean, it's like, this is a tough.
Yeah, it's a no-win.
Yeah. But on the flip side, it's like, this is real. Like, once you take this step, man, like this is real. Like, this is real. These are real dollars. Like, this is going to be a roster spot for like $3 million a year. Like, that's not nothing. You can't just be like, hey man, let's be nice. Like, no, man, if teams are signing, multi-million-dollar organizations are signing you based on the idea of trying to get your dad, like this is real.
And the sense of like, okay, if this was any other player, he's laughed out of, the draft. And so his skill level does not match that of most of the other players in the draft. However, he denies all the draft workouts except for the Lakers and the Suns. So it's like,
yeah,
that's a privilege thing, right? For him and being LeBron's son. So like, I'm basically agreeing with you, and you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's like, just treat him like anybody else. It's like, okay, well then take your draft workout with the Wizards and take your draft workout with.
I know. I didn't know he had turned down everybody but the Lakers and the Suns.
Yeah. So
that's why when you look at like, and I just read earlier, like Xavier Johnson was like on Lake Monroe, former Indiana point guard, like just, getting hanging out Lake Monroe and like got the call, like Pacers want to try you out. Like immediately it's like, boom, he's there. Like, I'm not saying they're the same. Xavier Johnson has more college basketball accolades than Bronny has. And
1,000%.
he's not turning down. He would take any workout anywhere, anytime, I would assume. And yeah, it's funny that like a guy with way less accolades, like, nah, man, like he wouldn't, if the Pacers wanted to try him out, he'd be like, no way.
Oh yeah, most of these kids are going on tours every single day, working out for these teams, like because it's not guaranteed, and it is a fraternity of very few guys that play in the league, and so yeah, to again, like, good for him, like you're LeBron's son, so you're gonna get drafted and you can do all that, but like you also can't come out and just be like, hey, he's just a kid, treat him like everybody else that's coming in the draft. It's like, well, that kind of was negated when you told the whole world how great he was.
I was talking to my wife about this. I'm like, it's you take all of the stuff away, he's not even a prospect. Like, I mean, he's a guy who averaged like 5 points a game at USC. And dude, I know there are guys, like Devin Booker, I don't think started at Kentucky when he got drafted.
Yeah, but he was a 5-star,
Right.
Like,
I mean, there's guys who have funky, college numbers. Like, that's not awesome. But A, they're not talked about this much, and B, like you said, they have, they were 5-star recruits. Like Bronny was always a mid-level recruit, and even then, when he was on those boards, I was reading stories about how it's like ESPN was like, man, just put him in the top 100 because it'll make news. It's just like whether he's the end.
Funky numbers on a bad team too. Like that's like Devin Booker, was on a national title contending team.
Correct.
Bronny put up bad numbers on a bad team.
Well, and the other thing too, again, this is, I hate, but you're becoming a professional. It's not like you're talking about kids. Also a massive medical red flag. I mean, he had a heart attack condition at the beginning of the year. Like that's not nothing. That is almost like,
they're going through all kinds of rigorous.
Yeah, and hopefully he's healthy and can play, but it's like that's a massive medical red flag.
Yeah, it's just like I'm intrigued by how it all plays out because I do think it'll be cool to see like a father-son duo in the NBA, but it does feel kind of cheapened, because it doesn't feel like Bronny is actually an NBA caliber player.
Do you think Bronny gets drafted by the Lakers?
I do.
Yeah.
I think they take him. Obviously LeBron pulling a lot of strings over there. Rightfully so. He's possibly the greatest to ever play, but they just hired JJ Redick, which that whole thing's hilarious. Like they started a podcast 3-4 months ago, which was a phenomenal podcast. Like I loved it. And then now he's his head coach.
That was that was very odd. I mean, the thing with Hurley, I actually thought, the more you read about it, it sounds like it might have just been a complete,
negotiation.
There's a weird like Shams versus Woj thing going. There's a lot of angles you could take this. I thought it kind of made sense for Hurley because if you're Hurley, people are like, man, you walk away from UConn. Like, how could you do that? It's like, dude, he goes to the Lakers. He gets 2 years. He gets fired. Every college basketball program would hire Dan Hurley the next day. It wouldn't be like, well, I don't know, man. Woodson's doing pretty. Like, no, we would outside of maybe whoever just won the title. And even then, they might be like, we'll take him back. Hell, he could probably go back to UConn. Even if they won 2 more titles, they'd probably take him back. Like, he would have had his pick of the litter of any NCAA job that he wanted and probably another NBA job. It was an odd situation. I'm just not sure the Lakers ponied up enough money.
Well, that's what I didn't understand. Like I was hearing $100 million figures thrown out there, and then I look and it's like, oh, like that's Monty Williams' contract with the Pistons.
Yeah.
He's getting paid that to not coach. That was a weird one. I still don't know fully what to think about it. The Shams versus Woj thing is an interesting dynamic. How like Woj wrote the book about his dad, Hurley's dad, and then
and then you get like the Lakers, like they put we don't really have enough money, like we're kind of a family owner. It's like, dude, you get the Lakers, like you have a ton of money. Like yes, maybe your ownership is tied up in the team, but you could always sell part of the team. Like don't.
And yeah, look at Hurley's recruiting now. Like you can just be like, I turned down the Lakers, to coach you guys, and it all seems weird, especially the timing. Like there was nothing about Dan Hurley. Like the Lakers haven't had a coach for a while, and there was nothing about Dan Hurley. And then all of a sudden, it was just like for like a 4-day stretch, it's like the full court press is on for Hurley, and then it's over, and they hire the guy that Shams said they were going to hire. Yeah,
and maybe it was just a ploy for Redick. I haven't seen the contract come out yet for Redick get his contract, but I don't know. That's going to be weird. And honestly, I looked at it, I was like, I don't think it was a great job. Like it's the Lakers, but it's like you're getting the tail end of LeBron, but LeBron is still, I think, a tough dude to coach. Like he's a coach killer. Yeah, I mean, you get 2 years unless you're Spoelstra, who's the only guy who was able to survive the LeBron experience, the LeBron vortex. I look at this as that was not a great job, and I'm not sure the Lakers are going to be a top 5 team in the West, and you're probably going to get fired, and it's probably going to be your fault, and you're probably going to have to figure out a way to play Bronny James. And just the last Indiana connection on this is like this is where you feel bad for a kid like Jalen Hood-Schifino, who had a great career, got drafted in the lottery, played on a weird team this year, and now might get moved or assigned to the G League because he's got to make room for Bronny to play. And Jalen Hood-Schifino is a legit player who deserves playing time in the NBA and has earned it. And, for his sake, I hope that he at least gets traded and can go play somewhere else. The worst case for him is they just keep him under contract and put him on like 2-way assignment in the G League, which, is not probably what Hood Schifino wants or deserves in the second year on his contract.
Yeah, it all reminds you of this is an entertainment league, and this is all part of it. Like it's not fair to a lot of people. It's very much a play or a league where your situation can dictate your future. You got to be in a good situation, and it's why I think I saw a video the other day of going back to the Pistons. Austin Reeves was playing in a pro-am golf tournament, and this guy was like, "Come to the Pistons," and he said, "No way in hell am I going to Detroit." I was dying laughing, but it's like, but they know that there's places where your career can go to die, and you got to make sure you're in a good situation. And it's like with Pascal with the Pacers, he understood this was a great situation, and Obi Toppin coming here was a good situation. It's why Jalen Smith stayed with the Pacers when he was offered more money elsewhere, because he thought it was a good situation. Like, it's a situation-based league, and like if you get drafted by the wrong team in a bad situation, like even like Jarris Walker, like this could be career defining for him, and how he got drafted by the Pacers and like, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but like you could have all the talent in the world, but if you're not in a good situation, things can go south in a hurry. And so it's not fun. It's not a fun situation right now for Jalen Hood-Schifino, I'd imagine.
I agree.
Outside of like you live in,
living in LA and having an NBA contract. No, I hear that. I will wrap up with this. It was a couple months ago. I think it was on the Ryan Russillo podcast. Maybe it was Bill Simmons, one of those two. I listened to those a lot. It was Austin Rivers, not Austin Reeves. Austin Rivers had a deep dive conversation about just his career going from the number one recruit in college basketball to kind of being a backup. And it's a wild discussion, but it's like it happened quick. I mean, he was a stud at Duke, was a lottery pick, and within 18 months was suddenly a rotation guy, and then was struggling to keep in a lineup. And just
his dad also traded him.
Yeah, fair. But just hearing him talk about it and like how quick it can change. But he talked about how he'd look at other teams like, man, if I could just be on that team, and like just how much situation matters, even for a dude like that. And he said, and I think he's right, there's probably only 4 to 5 guys in the league where situation doesn't matter. Like LeBron, Giannis, the guys you can think of. It's like everybody else. It's like, I'm talking all NBA guys. Their situation matters. And dude, you can even look at it for the Pacers, like Halliburton. I'm not sure Halliburton had the same trajectory in Sacramento as he had here. I mean, you look at Oladipo when he came here. Situation matters even at an all-NBA level.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to like Nembhard. He's kind of in the situation Halliburton was in, where Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox, like Halliburton had to play off the ball a lot because of De'Aaron Fox. And so Halliburton gets moved, and all of a sudden he's a stud. Well, now Nembhard has to play off the ball a lot and probably isn't being maximized. So it's like, I don't think Nembhard turns into Halliburton,
right?
But it's kind of that similar situation Halliburton was in.
No, you think Nembhard will turn into De'Aaron Fox? I hear you.
Hey, whatever.
All right, Tony, awesome. Thank you. As always, great stuff. Everyone out there, thank you for listening, and we'll be back maybe before free agent. If not, Tony and I will be back the week of July 4th, and we'll do some free agent talk, and hopefully the picture will get a little clearer. But I think, as we saw, this is going to be murky for a while. What the Pacers are going to do, it's going to be a murky time for a couple of months and probably throughout the season, but hopefully a good season ahead as well. So thank you all for listening for the Right Up Meridian podcast. This is Scott signing off.